Oh, we go. Good morning and welcome to the latest in the British Heart Foundation live training sessions. I'm Keith Anderson. I'll be presenting today along with my colleague and fellow coach, Ben Barwick. Good morning, Ben. Are you there?
Morning, Keith. I'm here. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very good. Have you been out for a run this morning, Ben?
I most certainly have. A bit cold and chilly here, but wrapped up warm and out got for a nice recovery run. How about you? You been getting out?
Yeah, I was out this morning with Debbie and our little dog Bella, and we just ran around the fields, and so a little bit off-road, a little bit undulating, but that'll come into the presentation, no doubt. But yeah, all good. So busy day today, another
Very
busy show,
busy.
and hopefully the guys that are watching will get some useful information and top tips. Today we're looking at really getting started, so kick-starting your training. Whether you're training for London landmarks or other spring half marathons, or indeed the big ones like London Marathon, it's time to get going and lay down that really good base of training. So the topics that we're going to cover today are indeed that getting started and what we want to try and achieve in the early parts of training. the importance of not just training, but training smart. So the whats and the hows and the whys of good training. Why to include a practice race? Ben's going to give you some advice on that and perhaps which races to look at. A very motivational message from the British Heart Foundation team, and what to do when it gets tough, what you need to think about just to get through one or two difficult periods over the next few weeks and months. We're going to tell you one or two bits about some further training opportunities that we have coming up. We'll have question roundup at the end, but if you do have any questions as we go through, then please just file them in. Perhaps you just explain briefly how to do that, Ben.
Yeah, of course. So if you're viewing this on our webpage, there's a little box to the right-hand side where you can ask questions. I've sort of put a little note in there, and also on YouTube underneath, you'll be able to see the sort of the live chat options where you can ask questions. Alternatively, if you just find us on social media, you can ping a question in there or send us an email, and we should be able to pick that up during the presentation. So it's nice and easy.
So hopefully, if the question is applicable to the section we're in, then Ben will ask it as appropriately, and if not, we'll round them up at the end when we do a bit of a roundup. So let's get started, and let's just focus the mind a little, Ben. Weeks to go for these various people and their races. We've got quite a generous amount of time, but when you start looking at Brighton half and Bath half, 15, 16 weeks to go, it's not a lot of time. Others, London, you've got the luxury of 22 weeks. Now that sounds like an age, but really when you think you've got Christmas in the way, we want to not train hard all the time. We want to have a little bit of recovery weeks every now and again, and also people will perhaps come up against a little bit of a problem, won't they, Ben? A little bit of a setback.
Yeah, and that's perfectly normal. It's something that we'll cover later on today, just how to deal with those setbacks. But you haven't got 22 weeks of solid training, or even 15 weeks. And there's the taper as well to take into account, isn't there, Keith, where you sort of ease back over the last few weeks before the race.
Of course, yeah. That's quite important. So you have to almost take 2 weeks off for the half marathon or 3 weeks for the marathon off that of hard training. And the thing about the process of endurance running, which we'll talk about as we go through, you can't just cram it like other things in life. It needs time. So having the luxury of time is a really good thing. So tuning in now and taking action, great, fantastic. So let's get started, Ben.
Yeah.
The one thing that people have to understand about training for something like a half marathon or a marathon is that endurance running is very different from other sports. You can be playing football 2 or 3 times a week or netball and think that you're in great shape. Well, you are for football or netball, but you're not, unfortunately, for endurance running, because endurance running is a repetitive action where your body weight is impacting the road. There's a real danger of overuse, and the body takes quite a period of time to get used to that action. The muscles get impacted, and there's micro damage in the muscle cells, the knees, the hips, the thighs, the tendons, the bones. It all kind of will ache, and we've just got to manage the training load so that we don't overdo it. The body loves or can cope with small incremental changes, so gradual, sensible, progressive training. What it doesn't like is you don't do anything for weeks and then suddenly you go bang, or you leave yourself with too small amount of time, too few weeks, and suddenly you've got to try and cram in all this training to reach a decent level of training for your event. So correct training load, just gradual progressive training. Being patient is really important. Ben will tell you, I wasn't very patient, was I, Ben, when I started?
No, certainly not.
Stories you've heard.
Yes.
I used to want to do it all today rather, and it used to end in grief until I got a good coach who would then help me through the process. So take your time, be patient. It's not an instant fix. We have to lay really good, solid foundations, building a really good base, so that your body gets stronger, your body gets used to the impact, get used to the time on feet, gradually becomes more conditioned, and we develop your endurance and we develop your running economy and your running efficiency. These are the words that we're really looking for, and we'll tell you how to do that. But you've got to remember to look at the bigger picture and be patient. That's the key thing. Consistent training at the correct intensity with patience. So that's really, when we start putting it all together, is what we're looking for. And you need to listen to your body. We don't want over fatigue or really sore muscles. You know, when you started out, Ben, and you were doing the long run, how did it start to feel? How did it feel initially, and then how did it start to feel?
Initially, it was horrible because you were, you know, it was so new, and even 60 minutes, you know, 60 minutes was a long run at that point in time. And mentally, I found it quite tough, and physically, you would be a bit tired. But once I sort of was trying to hit the right effort level of that conversational pace, it became a lot easier, and it actually became the most enjoyable run of the week, because I was out there spending some time on my feet, not looking at the watch, worrying about what my pace was doing, and just enjoying being out there. And then as I developed my training and did more of the other stuff that you're about to talk about, it became faster, and that meant it was a lot more fun as well, because you were covering more distance for that same effort level.
Yeah, we don't want any of your training to be so extreme that you've got really sore muscles. Yes, you're going to have some fatigue, but we don't want over fatigue. We don't want overly muscle soreness, and certainly we don't want you doing some of the things that people tend to recommend that really don't know much about endurance running, like, you know, really hard boot camps, or, you know, hard circuit training, or this high intensity HIIT training. They're great fun. I mean, I'm not knocking them. They are great fun. They're great motivation, and they do have a form of fitness, but it's not for endurance. And if you get to the stage where you're doing a hard circuit session, but the following day you can't actually, you know, lift your mug of coffee to your mouth because your arms are so fatigued, you're doing it wrong. Anything extra has to be complementary towards your running, towards your development of endurance training. By all means, do some Zumba classes, do some cross training, but make sure it's specific, make sure it's the right type of training. The hour plans that we've created have been really put together over 20 years of experience. You know, I ran as a 40-year-old in Boston marathon, 2 hours, 17 minutes. And I took my training and the training I'd learned from people like Paula Radcliffe and Richard Nurker, real quality people and coaches. And we've gradually crafted it over these years to make sure that it hits the spot. So it's, you know, there's lots of advice out there, isn't there, Ben? There's lots of experts on the website.
Scary amounts.
But some of them are scary plans. So you've got to know your plan. You've got to understand it. You've got to appreciate what we're trying to achieve. And you've got to be patient with progressive training, as I've said. Harder is not better. It's about the right level of training for you and for your body. And you need good nutrition, hydration, and good rest and recovery. So try to keep all that in focus. But remember, you're not the finished article now. This is the start of the development. And we want the finished article when you do London landmarks later in the year, or when you are doing London Marathon. That's when you're the finished article. From now to then, it's just training. So let's focus on that. So we need smart training. We don't just need any old training. We don't need you just going out for any old run. Every time you put your running shoes on, we want to be, why are we putting them on? What is this session I'm going to do? What's this run for? Broadly speaking, for a good endurance athlete, we want well-conditioned legs and body, good development of running efficiency, running economy, and a good overall body condition without any setbacks, without any injuries. The key thing is that it's not all about the long run. It's a common mistake, isn't it, Ben? Everybody thinks, well, I'm doing a half marathon, I'm doing a marathon. Therefore, as long as I get my long run in every week, I just make it longer and longer and longer, I'll be fine.
Definitely. It certainly happens, and you can understand it because it is a long way. You know, 30 miles is a long way. 26 is even further, and it's sort of understandable that you want to just run and run and run to get that in there. But you become very one note, don't you? Very one pace if you just run long all the time, and you're more likely to get injured than anything else, and it's going to be dull as anything.
Yeah, that's the problem. I think, if you just think, oh, well, if I had a bit of extra every week to my long run, then everything's going to be fine. But as Ben says, you're going to end up being only one pace. You're going to end up potentially with a higher risk of injury. And three, you're just going to find it dull and probably lack motivation and get fed up with it. And that's normal. So what we're looking is to say, right, what does the endurance runner need? What's the package that makes a good endurance runner? And this doesn't matter whether you're a beginner or whether you're way more experienced. So if you're running 6-7 hours, or if you're running 3 hours, it's the same principles. It's just different amounts of it and different emphasis of different things. But we want you to, yes, have a good long run. But right now, the long run doesn't have to be too long. And if you're just starting out on this journey, it's often better if the long run is actually a long walk. Brisk walk, yes. Off-road, if possible, if safe, yes. Over 1 or 2 little undulations, fantastic. If you're a run walker, fine. If you're a runner, great. Running easy, running comfortable, running conversationally. If you look at the supporting information that we send with our training plans, there's a talk test. There's a description of how the long run should feel. That's what we want you to do. Go out with a training partner, have a chat. It's that level of effort. If you're on your long run and you're having to put your hands on your knees and you're blowing and puffing and panting and you're thinking, I can't do this, you're going too fast, you're going too hard. Slow down, relax, and have a bit of a walk, and then jog again. It's about developing time on feet. It's not about developing how fast can I go. That comes later. So take it steady. There's months of ticking all the boxes and making sure that we're actually getting all the training done. It's the consistency that's going to get you there. So with the long run, just as I said, time on feet. Don't do it too hard. Let things body gradually adapts. Gradually, your speed will improve for the long run for the same effort. You'll find that your recovery's much better and that you're covering more distance. I remember when I was doing long runs where, I was okay to 60 minutes, a bit like Ben really, but then when I went to 90 minutes, I jumped too soon and my quads were just painful, sore. It was horrible. And you think to yourself, what am I doing this for? Well, if I'd taken it back a little bit, done it a little bit slower, my shift, then things would have been a lot better. So the long run takes time. Gradually, once we get into the training plan, the long run gets longer because your body's then getting ready. You can deal with it. And eventually, we will put in some half marathon pace practice and some marathon pace practice. So you can actually practice some of your long run at the pace you're going to run on the day of your race. And that's very important. But that's later in the plan. The other areas that we need you to look at is to get good strength endurance. And we get that from running on hills and also from doing good strength and conditioning work, specific strength and conditioning work. So introducing hills, it's a bit like my run this morning. It was off-road, it was round the fields, it was slightly undulating. I haven't done hills for quite a long time. So this is me reintroducing them into my training without them being too severe. It certainly wasn't anything that you'd look at and think, oh my goodness, that's a hell of a hill. No, it was just little gradual undulations. And from that, I would then perhaps lift the level of the undulation and I would perhaps raise the effort level that I was trying to run up and down these hills, up to something what we call threshold effort, which will come shortly. And beyond that, the next progression of hills is to have Kenyan hills, where you're literally running up and down a hill for quite a while, and it is demanding. So if you're a beginner, that's not going to be in your plan, but if you're more advanced, you will see that coming into the plans that we provide. So hills are really good for leg conditioning, strength. They're really good for just your mental attitude as well, aren't they, Ben? If you are out there doing hill training, it takes a bit of mental strength, doesn't it?
Oh, it definitely does, and you'll call back to that. If you're mentally tough in training, you're going to race mentally tough. So it's a really nice way of building that mental strength. And if you can be strong on the hills, there's nothing better than if you get into a race and there is a little bit of a slope or a ramp and you're just passing other people because they're looking at it thinking, oh my goodness, not again. And you're thinking, right, here we go. I've done all this good work and get up here nice and strong.
Yeah, I mean, as Ben says, not only are they great for for use in a race, but they do add such a dimension to your running ability when you go back onto the flat. So that's the strength endurance element. As I say, you can add to that with some really good body conditioning exercises and some cross training. So you can do things like the rowing machine, the elliptical trainer, but you can have some fun with cross training and include Zumba and say, that type of exercise. Circuits that are specific for running are fantastic. But those sort of things are going to give you a bit of variety, which means that you're not going to find your training boring and just repetitive. With endurance training, it is a bit repetitive, but we try to put some variety in there. Excuse me. The key element, as well as the long run the hills, is a thing called threshold. This really is the holy grail of endurance running. It helps develop your speed endurance. Now, it's not speed. People that are running 3 hours and maybe below will have some speed training in their plan. Those that are a bit slower, what we want is no speed, no sprinting, none of that really fast stuff, because that's a high risk of injury and you just don't need it for the level that we're at. What we need is to develop the ability to hold a reasonable pace for longer periods of time. And if you do that, you're working up to a certain effort, which is controlled discomfort. And again, if you look at the supported literature that we send you, it will explain what that means in terms of a talk test and also how it should feel and what's it for. But in a nutshell, what it does is develop your running economy and your running efficiency. And so for the same effort level, you can hold a better and better and better speed as you go through the weeks. And you will see the improvement if you do it. But you have to do it and you have to start doing it. And you may start at 4 sets of 3 minutes, but by the time you're finished, you might be doing 4 sets of 10 minutes by the time you get through to March or April. So it's a gradual progression, but it is really going to help you develop your speed endurance, which in turn will make the long run seem so much easier and you'll be so much more effective at your long run. So what we're doing is developing gears. So instead of having just one gear from doing your long run, you'll find you'll have 2 or 3 gears and you can apply them in your training and in your racing. Finally, the other elements just to include in good training would be some form of mobility, stretching or yoga or Pilates. Us chaps tend to be a little bit more resistant to that type of work, don't we, Ben?
We definitely do.
And really, we could do with doing a lot more of it, because it's just going to help you get too stiff, help avoid your muscles getting too tight. And if you use the foam roller exercises again that we provide, you're going to help just keep everything in order, keep everything stretched, and that's going to help you just maintain consistency without any setbacks. That's the key. No setbacks, no injuries. And if you do the full package of endurance elements, you're gonna be really successful. So remember, it's not just about the long run. So I think you're going to talk about some races, Ben.
I am. I've got a couple of questions that have actually come in, and I think one of them definitely is sort of appropriate for now. It comes from Tim, and he said that if he misses a training session, should he recover that session on a rest day? It's probably a bit of a difficult one to answer, because some sessions are sort of more important than the others, and you don't want to be cramming sessions into the back end of a week, do you?
Yeah. I mean, if he's following one of our plans, then you'll see that the key sessions, the really important sessions, are highlighted in a different color. In green, yeah, or in red. So those are the ones that you really need to try and get done. Like Ben says, we don't want to end up concertining everything so that you're trying to do 2 quality sessions back to back and then follow that with a long run. You've got to have a day in between a key session of something, whether it's rest or conditioning or swim or whatever, and then the long run at the end of the week. But if you have to miss anything, miss the recovery runs, miss the conditioning, miss the cross training, but try to get the key sessions done. I hope that helps. If it's anything more specific, Tim, then just ping me a copy of your training plan and I'll revise and help you monitor it.
Yeah, brilliant. And he's got another one. It's quite an open question. We could be here forever talking about it. But can we say something about the wall, that mythical brick wall that you put up, whether it's at 10 miles in the half marathon or 18, 20 miles of the marathon?
Yeah.
It's a bit of a sort of a media hype thing, isn't it, Keith? More than anything, because you can certainly avoid it if you do the right things.
Yeah, I mean, this is one item that we will cover when we do our next hangout later in the new year. But Tim, the wall is this mythical beast that really, if you've done the right training, if you've got the right nutrition, if you go off at the right pace and you know you can run that pace and you look after yourself in the race by taking on energy and taking on hydration, then you won't hit the wall. Hitting the wall is when you run out completely of energy, run out of glycogen, and you just grind to a halt because you've been going too fast, basically. But what you will hit is some sort of period where you have discomfort, where your legs get tired, your muscles get tired, and mentally in the marathon you become tired. So you have to give yourself a talking to. So there's two different types of wall, if you like. There's the big brick wall that you ain't going to get over, under, or around, because you've run out of energy. Or there's the mental bit of a wall that you can deal with as long as you've got the right strategy. And we'll talk about that strategy when we have our hangout in March and April. So look at those. All right.
Yeah, Keith, as you said, I'm going to talk a little bit about booking a practice race, because this is really vital for those doing half marathons, for those doing marathons. And it is important to practice. One of the reasons is that it allows us to see the improvements that you've made in your training. So we can confirm we're moving in the right direction, and just makes life a little bit more fun. And we can also assess your fitness based on your performance in the race as well. And that'll give us an idea of what pace we'd be looking at for you running your marathon or running your half marathon in. And the other thing is that training can be very dull. If you are doing 16, 18, 20 weeks of just training, it's going to be very, very boring. So having that slight variation in what you're doing is really, really vital to help break things up a little bit. And most importantly, it's called a practice race because you get to practice all the things that you need to do on the race day and go through. I mean, there's all sorts of things like getting your kit right, standing in line for the toilets, making sure you've brought the right shoes with you, you've got pinned your number on, you've put your chip on, getting to the start line at the right time, standing around in a pen for maybe 20, 30 minutes before you're running, making sure you're not getting cold. All of those things and more, you need to practice to make sure that come the big day, you aren't going to get overawed by the whole thing and freeze and make an error, a basic error, whether that's sort of not eating in time or not taking your number with you or forgetting your singlet. All of those little things, they're very mundane things, but on race day they get hyped up to such a high intensity that you need to make sure you're really comfortable with what you're doing. And I mean, I've turned up to races with the wrong pair of shoes. Luckily, I was wearing some running shoes that I could actually race in. I know people who've travelled overnight and they've left their chip at home. Just silly mistakes that happen. Have you got any tales of woe, Keith, from your running experiences? Or you?
I never made any mistakes, ever. Well, yes, I have. Yes, I have.
I know.
I had officially retired, so it didn't happen during my athletic career. But I did actually make the schoolboy error of I was bending down, retying my shoelaces when the gun went, which ended up me being smothered in people jumping over me, and took a while to get up and get going. So you don't want to be doing that, Ben.
No.
And you're right, there's nothing like practice. When I first started racing, I was very nervous and anxious because I piled expectation on myself, which is a whole nother story. But you will have nerves, you will be anxious. It is a different world. If you've never lived in the running world, you won't understand the half of it. But you need to go along and practice and just see what it's like. And it's mainly about being organised, as with organised. And if you're organised and you've just sat and made a list and checked off and got everything sorted, then you're going to be calm and relaxed. And really what Ben's saying is if you can do that before your most important race of your life, then it's going to make sure that you are relaxed for that big race. And that's going to help no end when you come to race day.
Yeah, brilliant. And so if you're doing a half marathon race, we suggest at least a 10K practice race beforehand. And we know there's not that many of them around, and they can be a little bit more difficult to find. So it might be that we need to do a time trial one weekend, or we go and do a park run where you run it at a 10K pace, or even at a half marathon pace to get an idea. And if you're doing a marathon, we'd suggest at least a half marathon race in the build up to that. As you can see on screen, we've got a few popular half marathon race dates, sort of running through from February all the way through to late March, where the London Landmarks half is. There's a Runners World who've got a great event search. There's also local running clubs who can give you some ideas of races that are local, and book early to avoid disappointment. And once, because they do fill up, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, these days races are filling up, sooner and sooner. One thing I would say in your 10K or your half marathon, you want it to be as representative of your fitness as we can. So try to pick a flat, fast marathon that's well organised, rather than a lumpy half marathon or 10K that's or anything that's kind of slightly off road. You want it to be on road, flat, and have a good reputation of being reasonably quick. And from that, then we can draw out the information we need to be able to tell you, look, we think you can do your half marathon at this pace, or we think you can do your marathon at this pace from this evidence. But I think Hastings could be a bit lumpy, Ben, I think.
Definitely. And yes, you sort of mentioned there, let us know the date of your race so we can do two things. One is actually make sure you're tapering down for the race a bit, so you're not training hard that week of it. You'll see in the plans that you've been sent that it does look like a bit of an easier week as you build towards that big race. And also let us know the results so we can have a look afterwards. And would you say that the 25th of March with London Landmarks is a bit too close for marathon people, or can you race, a couple of weeks beforehand? What's the sort of views on that?
I think it's probably a bit too close for people that are doing, London. I think, definitely for Brighton, I think it's too close to race it aggressively. I think in the right circumstances, if it's the right number of weeks out, you could use it as a very good marathon pace practice race. So you'd have to be more disciplined, but it would give you a real good guide 3 weeks out whether you were ready to run that pace all the way for your marathon if you practice it in that half marathon. It's a great British Heart Foundation event, so it'd be great if you could support it and use it as your marathon pace practice event. It'd be absolutely ideal. Obviously, there are those people that are actually aiming for London Landmarks, so they're really tuned up for it. But I would say that doing a race is important. It does add just to steady the ship. It gives us good information. And if you haven't got one of our plans, then Ben will show you our email addresses. Please just email us, and we can get the necessary questionnaires, paperwork to you to get you on one of our plans ASAP, really, because it is this thing about just having something you believe in, having something you can trust, and ticking all the boxes. So yes, just send in the email.
Brilliant. And just on questions, I've had one come in through Twitter actually, and just talking about, obviously we know we're talking about half marathons, but with the marathon prep, there's obviously lots of 20-mile races that exist in the build up to the marathons, and people like to do 20 miles because I don't know why, but they like to do 20 miles in their long run. Is that appropriate to go out and race these events? Are they good things to put in, or is there some dangers with them?
I think there's a lot of dangers with them. I think you can use them as a training event if you're ready for it. But if the longest run you've done, Ben, is 14 miles and you're going to step up to go and race 20, it's way too much of a stretch. So we just stick to training. But if you're ready for 20 miles, then as a training event, I would be suggesting, look, run the first 2 miles easy. We'll run 16 miles at marathon pace. We'll run 2 miles easy to cool down. That way you've got your 20 miles on your feet, you've tested yourself at your marathon pace, you've been very disciplined, and you've taken on board your nutrition and your hydration during the race. Full practice. But people that race it to say, well, I'm the best over 20 miles at this, that, and the other, generally, in my experience, find out in the marathon itself At 18 miles, they run out, the wheels come off because they've just run the best race of their life, 20 miles, and they haven't recovered enough. The problem with endurance training, endurance racing, is you think you've recovered, but fatigue can be deep seated in the muscles, and that way you don't know. And then when you actually, until you do the race, so I wouldn't race one, but I would definitely use them as part of preparations. Yes.
Excellent. Great. And we've now got a little message from the British Heart Foundation, a little video that's available on YouTube, just to remind us all really why we're doing this training and what the fantastic cause that you're supporting.
I was going to move into his wonderful flat and hopefully have children, get married, go abroad, and there's no dress rehearsals, there's no nothing. It got taken away from us in minutes. We were doing a bike ride and I can just remember being very thirsty. I said, I need to get some water, and my last words to Chris were, I'll meet you in the usual spot.
He was always laughing and joking, entertaining. Danny was a real leader. He was, without a doubt, one of the best players we've got. He loved it. The referee stopped the game and said, will you all go to the changing rooms? There's an ambulance on the way for your teammate. And the last thing I said to him before we went out was, good luck, keep your head on, stay cool and don't get in trouble with the referee.
I knew him since I was 4 years old. Saw him every single week of my life. He was like a brother to me. We used to play golf most evenings after school. We always made plans like going to be best men at each other's weddings and stuff like that. I remember I tried to ring him on the day that it happened. I think I was about 10 minutes too late. So I suppose if I've got one regret, that would be it, not phoning him 10 minutes earlier just to be able to speak to him.
She was a bubbly, fun-loving person. I think she went to school to socialise rather than learn. She loved motocross. She was a bit of a wild child. The last words I said to her when she left the house was, I love you and enjoy your evening and don't be late home. But she never come home.
It's like having a stone in your shoe. It's really, really painful, and you can jiggle it around and keep moving forward, but the problem never gets any less painful. You just sort of learn to keep going with it. The last thing I said to my mum before I left to drive to my race that morning was bye and I love you.
It's an incredibly powerful video, isn't it, Keith? And a real reminder of all the hard work that you guys are doing.
Yeah, indeed. It's every time I see it, it still gets you, and that heart disease touches everybody, it seems, and the work that the British Heart Foundation have been doing and for years and years has been fantastic, and it continues to improve. And the research continues to work hard to help stop all this, and what you guys are doing, that's the cause you're doing it for, and I'm sure each one of you individually has got your own personal story as well as the overarching story. So yeah, I think they might need some of that inspiration, Ben, mightn't they?
They might. I've just quick before I move on to talking about sort of dealing with the sort of setbacks and the winter and everything else coming up. If you've got any questions about your fundraising, about your vest, your race entry, anything like that, there's a fantastic Heart Runners team at the British Heart Foundation, and you should just drop them a line either with their email address or on the phone, and they'll be able to help out with all of those little bits. So don't be afraid to get in touch. They've got lots of resources as well to help with your fundraising, because the fundraising is almost as difficult as the training, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you got to plan that. I mean, the thing again about watching this, hopefully you can get ahead with your fundraising, because if you get a bit in before Christmas, then people have got a few more quid in their pocket, and they'll probably more readily give it to you. So get a bit of your fundraising done now, and it might take the pressure off a little bit later on.
Brilliant. So what to do when training gets tough. There's a few sort of areas that we'd like to talk about today. The first being the Great British Winter, which we know is around the corner, and we've all got that to look forward to. But remember, there's no such thing as bad weather. There's just bad clothing. And if you invest in a good jacket, have lots of layers that you can put on when you're running, dress up nice and warm, get some long tights as well, hat and gloves, that's going to make a real difference. And it means that you're going to get out in most conditions when you're out there. So do spend some money or put it on your Christmas list, all of those little extra bits, because it's really important. But the weather can get too bad to train, especially if we have heavy snow or just really bad winds and lots of rain. It might be worth looking into a local gym where you could maybe go and use it for a day as a guest member. They might even let you use it for free if you mention that you're fundraising for the British Heart Foundation. But the treadmill can be quite a useful tool, can't it, Keith, to keep your training up when you're in those sort of worse conditions.
Yeah, indeed. It's I mean, the British winter can be pretty harsh, and it's more the kind of dark and icy roads can be difficult. So if you are running outside, not on the icy roads, but if you're running outside in general, make sure you're seen by having good reflective gear, be visible, and don't assume that any cars or bikes or whatever are going to see you. Just be a bit cautious. But in terms of training indoors, I did quite a lot of that because of where I lived up in North Yorkshire. Lucky enough to have a treadmill in the garage. Used to set it on 1% gradient, and still make sure you've got good running shoes, but it's a constant surface. You can train in reasonably nice running gear. You can have a drink of your water, and you just have to remember, whether it's outside in the wind or whether it's indoors on the treadmill bed, they've got to remember that the idea is to run at the correct effort level. Don't get fixated with pace, because in those conditions you can't run at the pace you maybe want to run. So running at the correct effort level, and if you're on the treadmill, great training tool, doing great stuff. Remember, don't just leave it at that one speed if you're starting to struggle. Turn it down a little bit so that you keep the balance right. And if you've got to train really early in the morning, late at night, perhaps ladies, if they're on their own in the dark, it's better to go and do it on a treadmill some of the time. But at the weekends, get out for your runs outside then.
Yeah, brilliant. I think the great thing about the treadmill is you often see people turn up to the gym and all they'll do is look next door and see what their pace they're running and put it up 0.1 or 2 miles per hour compared to them.
Yeah, exactly. Or you get two lads side by side and they're just, they're definitely not going to stop. One's going to fall off before they, slow down. So just be sensible about it.
And if you are running late at night, do get a good head torch so that you can see, and put lots of reflective clothing on. Go with the principle of the drivers are not going to see you unless you're flashing like a Christmas tree. So you can't put enough on. And talking of Christmas trees, Christmas is around the corner. Lovely segue that. And it is a big event and it is happening, which I'm really excited about. But some people maybe less than others. But you've got to just prepare yourself a little bit for it training wise. If you did get our latest newsletter, we did have a little section on surviving Christmas, and if you've not got that, again, ping us an email and we can send it to you. But I think the big takeaways from that is do maybe spend a bit of time with the family, and don't put your running in these awkward places that will annoy everybody, because it will frustrate them. I know it might be tempting when the in-laws are coming around to think, right, I'm going to go for a run now, but it might not be the best thing, and your family are going to be there supporting you when you're doing all this hard training over the next few months. So give a little bit back. And if you are going to parties and areas like that, try and adjust your training accordingly, because you can't really train well, can you, with a little stinking hangover?
No, it's not that I've ever had the experience of that.
No, of course not.
No, but it's definitely not the thing to do. You want to if you want to plan in, if you're going to have the occasional party night, then move your training around so that the following days are either a rest day or an easy day or a swim or something like that. You might have to be a little bit more creative over Christmas because some of the facilities that you perhaps use may be closed, but you can still do some core activities, conditioning work at home. I think, like you say, Ben, try and plan it so that it doesn't impact the family too much, because they are your greatest supporters. You do need them on side, so giving them a little bit of time at that time of year is a good thing. But equally, you know, I used to like get out, have a run on Christmas Day because it was nice, and you know, but I was the one doing the cooking, so nobody could argue.
Well, I have to get out on Christmas Day because, as you know, my mother does cook quite well, and there's a lot of food at home, and I'll know I want to enjoy that meal. So if I get out and go for a run, it certainly puts me in a better mood for it.
But I think just on last thing on Christmas, I think the thing is, you know, if there are lots of you know, company parties or social occasions, you just have to be smart, and you do have to remember with training for a big event like this, it requires commitment. So you are going to have to say no to some things, and that's, you know, that's just part of the game. So, and I think you're going to mention holidays.
Yeah. Another exciting thing that people do tend to book holidays at this time of year. There's almost two types of holiday. You've got your warm weather and your skiing trip. And with the warm weather, it can be quite a nice environment to train with, especially if it's nice and safe. If you go into a smaller island, you might be needing to do some more creative running because it's not as safe. But if you are training in the heat, make sure you're doing your running to effort level and not pace again, because you will be working harder to cool yourself down. So already your effort level is going to be raised because of it. So really don't focus on the pacing at all. And if you're going skiing, you're going to be on the slopes all day. You've got the sort of the après ski as well. It's not really a sort of a positive environment for training, is it, Keith?
No, I've tried it, and quite honestly, I think you know, when you've come off the slopes and you've done some good skiing, then you just want to relax and have some food and a glass of beer or something. So I think the best thing to do is to say, look, as with the warm weather holiday, excuse me, let's use those as recovery weeks where you're going to basically do another activity, and let's make sure the training either side of that is really good. But let's just, when you go skiing, you just try and avoid twisting a knee or letting anybody hit you. And that is one of the real dangers of that type of holiday. You know, how important is your half marathon or marathon to you and the fundraising that you're doing? Are you prepared to take the risk? And if you need to think about that and be careful. Now, 1 week might be fine. We do have people that, you know, go 3 times in the build up to a marathon, and we have to say to them, look, you know, what are you doing? Are you trying to be a skier, or are you trying to be a marathon runner? Because, you know, you have to draw the line somewhere. But if you have one of these holidays, etc., and it's going to happen, then let us know, and we can reorganize your training and make that a rest week, basically.
Brilliant. And Too Busy to Train is our next one that's on there. And I think this sort of comes down to that commitment side of things. And yes, you've got to have lots of draws on your time, aren't you? But you're going to have to sacrifice a few things to get the running out. You're going to have to ask people to help to move things around. But there is time to train, isn't there?
Yeah, you do have to be organised. You do have to be committed. You do have to be a bit selfish. But you do have to look at it and say, it's only for a period of time, but I want to do this. I've committed to doing this for this wonderful cause. I'm not going to let people down. And therefore, I do need the time to train, because it's a time. It does take time to develop. So, you know, these are the sort of challenges that you're going to face, and you've got to be organised. I find that highly motivated people that are, you know, really doing these things find time. I mean, I've got a guy, Brian, who I coach. I mean, he does his threshold training at 5:30 in the morning, Ben. You know, I mean, you know, most of us are still in bed, and he's out there bashing the streets because he knows that's the only time he can get it done. So it is possible, but you just got to be smart enough to say, look, I've got to get this done. But other times you've got to be smart enough to say, look, I'm really, really tired because I've had a hell of a few days at work. It's been mentally frazzling. I've had very little sleep. Therefore, it's the wisest thing to go and try and do a hard session. The answer is probably not. The answer is to go and do probably a steady run and clear your head, and then get ready for more training in a couple of days' time.
Brilliant. Yeah.
So, planning, Ben. Planning.
Yeah, and that comes along, that, as you spoke about in the beginning, that listening to your body and adjusting accordingly. And the last sort of, when training gets tough, it's that lacking motivation. I know in the comments, Keith, you can't see them, but people have said that we got the motivation is easy to find after such a powerful video. And Mary's actually running in memory of her son, Luke. So that's fantastic. And there's no reason she's not going to be lacking any sort of motivation Paul for this, like, the fantastic cause that she's running for. But you will have days where it is difficult to get out the front door. You're thinking, oh, not another run. I don't fancy it. It's a little bit cold. You know, the TV's on, the fire's on, and you're thinking, I can just sit here and enjoy ourselves. But everyone goes through it. So remember that you're not alone, and you've just got to try and get out the door, because that first mile, that first step is always the hardest. Even if you get a mile down the road and think, you know what, this isn't happening today, you can turn around, come back, and you've done a 2-mile run, and that's lots better than nothing. And at least you've given it a go. But I found that some of the best runs I've ever had when I really don't want to be out there, because I really just talk myself out of the session almost. And then I think, right, come on, just give it a go. And you have a really good time.
I think the really important thing is maintaining a routine. And even if you think to yourself, look, the weather's awful, I don't really feel like running, just put your kit on and go for a walk. And as soon as you're out there walking, you'll then start jogging, and then you'll go for a run. But it is that thing about getting through the door. But if you don't maintain the routine, then you have a few days off. A few days off become a couple of weeks. And that's when you feel tired. You feel more tired doing nothing than you do if you're actually training. So yes, you'll have runs that are fantastic where you feel like you're floating in and the world's wonderful, and you know it's just great. And you'll have other ones that you feel like a complete beginner. You feel like you're running through treacle and it's just horrible. So you just have to balance it out, Ben. You have to say, look, it's not all going to be great. Some of it's going to be good, some of it's not so good. But overall, it's just training. You have to keep looking at the plan, keep ticking the boxes, and the ones that do it consistently, tick all the boxes, they then stand on the start line, whether it's London Landmarks or London Marathon, whatever race it might be. You stand on the start line and you say, you know what? I've done virtually everything I could have done to be here today. So in Mary, running in memory of her, was it her son?
Luke, yes, I'm Luke, yes.
Yeah. Or whether it's everybody's own personal story, you know you've done it all for that.
Yeah.
And that's all you can do. So, you know, just got to stick at it, Ben.
Yeah, definitely.
We're here.
Yeah.
We're here to help. You know, we're here to help. We've got some training things coming up to help as well.
Yeah, and that keep it social as well is really important. You know, have friends that are on your Garmin, or have people on Twitter that you can talk to, just to message and say, I've done my run today, it's horrible, but I did it. And that will just keep you motivated. And I think you sort of almost forgetting that, you know, if you've got a target time, you're going to need to do the training to run that time. The PBs don't just get given out overnight. They are hard work and commitment, get you that time that you want to run. And the only way to do that is to do the training. You know, put the time that you want to run on your fridge, write it in big numbers and say, right, that's my sub 4. Then I want to run that. And that will definitely help get you out the door.
What people have to remember is when you see it on telly and you think it looks glamorous and I really want to do it and it's really motivational, it's fabulous. It's only glamorous if you've done the work. Because there's a point, whether it's the half marathon or the marathon, where it gets really hard. And if you're not fit, that really hard is horrible. If you're fit, it's just really hard. So, you know, do the work now. Do yourself a favor. Get a good consistent amount of training before Christmas done. You're going to come out into the new year in a whole different place compared to a lot of other people who are then trying to play catch up. Whereas you can be the smug one that says, well, I've already done 5 weeks of training or whatever it might be. That's the important thing. We have a couple of training activities that perhaps you want to put in your diary. We have a training day in January, which is on the 27th of January at British Heart Foundation headquarters in London. It's filling up really quickly, so there's only limited places now available. So please just drop us an email to book your place, and we can get you through that situation. It's a fantastic day. Not only do you get a chance to meet Ben with his video analysis, I'll be there presenting. You'll meet Debbie, who a lot of you have lots of email conversations with. We'll have our physiotherapist, Julie Sparrow, will be there, and also our nutritionist, Tracy Parker. We go out and do a threshold session, so great opportunity, if you're doing it right, for us to watch you running, help you with your running style, help you with all your training, everything. And as I said, Ben will check out whether you're whether you're looking good when you're running, because he'll video you. We've also got a couple of further hangouts like these. One, 24th of February, that will be really focused on all your preparations for the half marathon, for London landmarks, etc. We'll go through some of the logistics of the races, your final training, getting your kit right, etc. And then the 7th of April, we've got the one on similar, which is on focused very much on London Marathon, but we will touch on Brighton, and Paris is the day after this. So it might be, if you need a little bit of extra motivation for your race the following day, you can tune in from Paris for that. But so they're really valuable, I hope, and get them in your diary. I think we just need to check if we've got any further questions to
we are all out of questions, I'm afraid, Keith, so I can let you round up and people can enjoy their weekends.
Good. Yeah, well, I think the key things to take away from today is that you have signed up for a wonderful cause, not only for the British Heart Foundation, but also, no doubt, for your own personal reason for doing it for them. And you should remember that, and you should put that on your fridge. You've got to start. We need to start training, and it doesn't matter whether you're starting as a complete beginner or whether you're more advanced. We all have to start. We all have to take the first steps, and we all have to start being consistent and having a realistic plan. And if you haven't got that plan, please get in touch so that we can help you on the way. Making that plan work means that you have to understand it. You have to take responsibility for your training so that you know what you're doing and why you're doing it. If at any point you don't, that's what we're there for. If at any point you have a setback, that's what we're there for. If you have a setback, we're there to help you get over that setback. So training smart with specific training is really important. But above all, you've got to be patient. And if you're patient and you're committed and you're consistent, then you're going to get to the race. You're going to be able to stand on that line and you're going to be able to say, I've done it all, and I'm proud I've done it all. And we're here to help you be proud. We're proud of the fact that you're doing it for British Heart Foundation. We're out there running. We know what it feels like. So we're very proud of them, Ben, aren't we?
We are indeed, very much so.
And don't forget, we're only an email away from some help. So please keep in touch. Let us know how it's going. But I think that's it. And it's just a thank you from me and
from me too.
From him. And we'll start the two Ronnies again.
Yeah.
And we will see you next time. So good luck.
Have a great one. Bye.